All right, everyone, let's welcome to the stage Thomas Schiavone, the Calixa. Thomas, come on up.
I'm here, I think. Ooh,
I think you're muted, Thomas.
how about now?
There we go.
Yeah.
Hear you loud and clear. How's it going?
It's going all right, thanks. It's actually sunny here in San Francisco, so I can't complain.
Very nice. And do you go by Thomas or Tom?
Thomas, my whole life.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I am in a hotel room in Vegas. I've got the leopard blazer on. We're talking product-led sales, which is one of my favorite topics. So I'm ready to risk it all after this. So I am super excited for this session. So Thomas, why don't you give folks a brief introduction of yourself and of Calixa for folks that might not be familiar with what you all do?
Sure. So I'm Thomas, CEO and co-founder of Calixa. I built Calixa coming out of my experience. I was the first PM at Twilio, so joined Twilio in 2010. And the thing that I noticed is all of our sales motion, actually for most of the first 6-7 years of the company, was for inbound developer interest and capitalizing on that, right? And so we tried some attempts at outbound sales that wasn't working well for us. But what we found is with the flood of developer signups, there were deals in there. And so how did we enable sales to identify the deals that were in the signups? And traditionally, like the CRM did not have that data. So we needed to build a tool where sales and operations could see everything that was going on with a customer. And so that they could identify who they should be talking to, what they should be talking about, when they should be talking to. And that was the lifeblood of the company for the first 6-7 years. I think it took Twilio a while to figure out the more enterprise motion, which they eventually they did, and they have bottoms up and top down. But that's where the insight came from, that we had to build it all. And then talking to other large PLG companies of that era, you find out that everyone had to build it. And so I saw this opportunity for, what if we built this sort of revenue operating system for every company that's built this way, to empower sales with the data they need to effectively do their job. And that the data is this combination of sales data, CRM data, with product usage data, and putting it in one sort of sales cockpit where they can effectively prioritize and execute their deals. And I think the thing with this product-led motion is it's not just about the first sale, it's about subsequent sales. And so it's this ongoing selling process where you always have to be deeply in touch with the customer.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And, I think that there's a lot of buzzwords on go-to-market strategies that we're hearing about, right? Community-led growth, product-led growth, customer-led growth, sales-led growth. But I think most recently, we've seen a lot of studies from Clearbit and OpenView that have talked about PLG companies IPO at higher rates. They have higher net dollar retention, higher growth rates, higher retention rates. And on top of that, I think PLG companies actually tend to perform better post IPO. So it's there's a lot of data that supports why companies are kind of shifting towards this PLG motion. But I guess, first question for you would be, how do you define, is this just kind of a semantics thing? So we hear product-led sales, product-led growth, and sales-led growth. So how do you define product-led sales?
Yeah, I first of all, I semi hate the term. I think we got to come up with a better term, because it does feel like it puts product and sales in tension. It's like an either or thing, which it's not. I mean, I think fundamentally is what it's saying is like sales is super valuable, and how do we enable a sales effort where in a world where customers can sign up, start using your product, evaluate your product as well as others in parallel. And so how do we empower sales to be effective prioritizing and executing deals in a highly competitive environment where for every opportunity you have that's coming in the front door, they're evaluating 3 or 4 companies in parallel, right? Because we've made it so easy to buy certain classes of software. And I think fundamentally what it's about is, does your product and does your market enable for this bottoms up motion? I don't think you should force it. If you're a top down sale, you should not force bottom up. That makes no sense. And you probably shouldn't try to like force it in there, and you're going to fail. You're going to be frustrated. I think fundamentally it's about having a product that is easy to adopt and easily expands within a company without actually talking to the company. But the role of sales is actually in that thing is, how do we accelerate it, and how do we add certainty that we're actually going to close that business. So for me, product-led sales is selling in an environment where you have a bunch of signups, and your goal as a salesperson is, how do I use product data and all the data I have in front of me to effectively execute that deal and push it from turn it into a interesting sales opportunity, right? Or also at the same time, kind of ignore it and let it be sort of a self-serve opportunity, because you don't want sales working all deals, obviously. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because here at Pavilion HQ, I mean, we are this session relevant for me personally, and as well as our leadership team, because we're actually shifting from a sales-led growth model to a product-led growth model. And so I'm curious, I know we probably have a lot of folks on the line here today that are also thinking about doing the same and trying to dabble in and figure out, like, where do I start? How do I move to a product-led growth model? So, I know we heard from Pablo Dominguez today, and his whole book around what a unicorn knows is really based on some of these lean growth methods. And he talks about this concept of like constant experimentation. So, what would be your advice for folks that are trying to test, like, can we move from sales-led to product-led, or what's a way to test if you're in the right market or have the right product to have a product-led motion?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally you have to like look deep down inside yourself and do you have a product that you can grow and sell that way? And I think product-led was hot for a while. I think, as all things, when product-led sales-led were swinging back and forth, I think we're now back in sales-led being in vogue again. And I don't think you should let whatever the trends are sort of sway you. You should look, does my product get sold that way? Can people buy it that way? When somebody adopts it at a company, is there room for expansion within the company? How do I convert like one team or one user to many teams, many users? And if you look at your product and you don't see that it has that ability, then you shouldn't force a product-led model on top of it. That may mean as a company, you need to say, hey, we don't have a means to do this. What's a way to consume our product or build a version of our product that lends itself to that? But I think maybe the key takeaway here is you can't do product-led sales in a vacuum. You can't do PLG in a vacuum. You really have to align sales, marketing, and product all together. And it's like it's a company focus. It's not like a side project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And curious, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing with startups, PLG specific startups?
Some of the biggest challenges is like when to layer on sales and how to layer on sales. So if you've gotten, especially if you have had great growth with just this massive inbound funnel, I think layering on sales motions is new and different. And sometimes people try to run before they walk. And so I think you can really get ahead of yourself, because you might not understand when it's right to involve sales, what type of deals, and so I think that's where experimentation comes into play, right? So you should start like taking off a sliver of that inbound funnel and try to sales work it. We have found, and from a couple of companies we work with, it's like you don't want to push sales in too early. Like right when somebody signs up, don't necessarily hit them with a generic sales message and have a rep go after them, because that could chase that rep away, that customer away. The customer may want to explore a little bit. Then when there is some product usage, maybe have the rep reach out. But maybe the rep should also be sort of inclined to this, instead of an always be closing mindset, to an always be helping, right? And so you might end up hiring a different type of salesperson who's incented slightly different way, or just who wants to sort of be the product specialist in some way and should shepherd that sales process along. So I think it comes down to like having the right people, incenting them the right way, doing a really careful sliver test of it just to make sure that it works. And you're not like bombarding your signups with sales to the point which actually turns them off. And it's not because it's sales is turning them off. It's probably some generic messaging or a salesperson who's wanting to close the deal, but the person's like, hey, we haven't even gone on a date yet. I'm not ready to marry you. Like, I want to try your product out, right? And that's the beauty of PLG, is trying things out, which gives confidence. Then you want that human sales relationship to leverage.
Mm-hmm. A lot of what is discussed in the community is that like at early stage PLG companies, you'll typically hire CS first, who will you'll hire the profile of a person with, who embodies that sales acumen. I guess two-part question. Number one, would you agree with that? And then number two, kind of at what point do you then hire your first? Is it a certain amount of inbound lead flow, certain amount of product qualified leads, certain ARR growth stage that you get to? Kind of walk me through kind of what you believe that looks like as far as the go-to-market kind of hiring profiles early on.
Yeah, I think first is how technical or not is your product. So one, you could get away with like CS product specialist, or you might need sales engineering. There's actually a post about this yesterday from Thomas, and it's this notion of like for a technical product, maybe it's getting sales engineers to be your frontline sort of salespeople, and that can be really effective because it has that always be helping product specialist mindset. We did that at Twilio. Our sales engineers were on the front lines and critical in pushing deals. I think it comes down to like deal complexity. Do you actually are the deals getting complex? Do you need a salesperson to be actually running a sales process, navigating an organization? So if it's not as easy as sort of taking the inbound interest, helping them along and closing that, as you move up, there are going to be some deal complexities. As deals get over a certain dollar threshold, you're going through different levels of authorization. Then that's when you need sales. So I think it really comes down to one, how many leads you have to like satisfy to actually a true sales rep. Two, is it actually required? Are there complexities of the deals or the organizations they're selling into? If not, you don't need to do it yet. But with all companies, as you continue to go up market, you're going to start needing it because you're going to need to start prosecuting that deal in a way that's mostly always be helping, but also you can sort of more in this say like, okay, this is a sales deal. How can I, really drive the revenue from it? And so maybe it's initially about being very helpful to get the first close, but then you need a salesperson like looking around that organization. Okay, how can I expand across? Hey, I need to. Can you give me a really introduction to that person? I want to talk to that team, and that's where like the really opportunity kind of snowballs. But to summarize, complexity. Do you have enough opportunities to actually feed a salesperson, and and size of company you're selling into.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And to your point about moving up market, curious what kind of data points or specific indicators will let the revenue team know, okay, it is time to move up market, right? And I guess when you're sales led versus product led, how do you think about segmentation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the wonderful thing about being in a startup is your sellers are your front line, and they will help you understand where you're being pulled, and they'll potentially get you into deals where you're slightly uncomfortable, which is actually the best thing. Like I love that when our sellers can like get that interest. And so for fast growing successful startup, you'll feel that pull and you'll get pulled there, and and I think that is the best way. And so I'm a gut feelings type of person. And so I think your sales team will do a good job of stretching you and pushing you, and the type of as you'll get pulled into more and more deals, and then you have to decide as an organization, how big is that gap? Can we support them? Can we get to like, should we be distracted by that? Is the right distraction? And like what we've seen with Calixa, 18 months ago, we were mostly small startups and mid-market. And then we just got more enterprises pulling us up market. And we're like, well, we knew we had certain feature gaps, but we're like, oh, we can close those. Those are actually not the hard things. We just have to put some focus on it. And then like 9 months later, when you're talking to the next enterprise, as you're talking to more and more enterprise deals, we can say yes, 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 because we've been pulled towards that. And we made a conscious decision of like, yes, we need to incorporate that into our product roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Curious if you've seen with your customers, any success stories you can share of companies early stage who've implemented product-led sales, and kind of what are some of the specific things that you've seen that have worked?
The specific things I've seen work is implement and experiment, and like taking it off in bite-sized pieces. I think people can, it's easy to stall yourself in search of perfection. Oh, my data's not perfect, this, that, or the other thing. Let's get to started and test the hypotheses. If you end up like waiting to implement it because everything's not perfect, you're never going to do anything. So like the most important thing is pull off bite-sized pieces. Pick certain plays. Hey, I want to test the free to paid conversion. How do I take these free accounts and get them on my business plan? What are the hallmarks of that? What's the messaging? Because it's product-led sales is a combination of like when to talk to the customer, what to talk to them about, and so there needs to be trial and error around like when to reach out and what kind of conversation to be having, and you're not going to get it right the first time, and it's a beauty to just iterate, experiment, try with a focused group, and then expand out. And that's when it's successful. When you try to boil the ocean, you're going to stumble and fail and say it's not going to work. So the concrete thing is the ones that are successful take an experimentation and iterative process, and you have to stay close to the sort of the front lines and the data you're getting back. Look at it numerically, but also look at it qualitatively. Like, what are the conversations like? Why is it working well or not working well? And then iterate. And once you have something working, then expand onto the next thing and next thing and next thing.
I love it. Okay, excellent. Well, we've got just a few minutes left and we have a couple of questions. So the first question is, John is interested to learn how were we able to pick out the right signals in the data that matter most as it relates to knowing when to go PLG or product-led sales?
That is probably the single hardest thing. I think there are two ways to do it. We've actually on our platform built both. Initially, you can go by your gut, and there's some basic signals that you can think about like through your nature of your product, like where do you see unlock, where do you see growth, what are like the most important features, where do you see people when they hit up against the wall, that's the unlock. And so when you see that product usage behavior or you see that particular persona, then you can kind of encode that in a play and say, hey, when people use this feature X amount of times per week or hit this paywall, that's a great time to reach out. But I think at scale, like it's really hard. And so that's why we've built AI into our product. And so me and my co-founder's background has come from an AI startup that did fraud detection on the internet. So fraud detection for the likes of DoorDash, McDonald's, companies like that. We always said like, hey, we can find the bad people, but wouldn't it be great if we could find the good people? And so that's actually what we do at Calixa is you tell us who your good customers are. And then we go and build predictive models to say, hey, these are your signups today, or these people early in funnel that you should be reaching out to. And our machine learning has predicted it based on these different features. So we like make sure that the reps understand. The biggest challenge for any large complex company is knowing which signals are what. And humans can do that to a point, and then it falls off and it's hard to scale. And so that's why I think incorporating AI and machine learning into your scoring process and your outreach is critical. And so that's why at scale you're going to do that. To start off, you can use heuristics. You can build simple rules, so don't let AI get in the way. But eventually, you're going to want to start using AI, and that's why we support both.
There's a really interesting point here in the chat. Susanna says it's important to have both hunters and farmers in your sales model, as they both play an important role in the customer lifecycle. Curious, Thomas, what have you seen? What are some specific examples of success stories having both kind of a hunter and a farmer role within a PLG motion?
Yeah, I think with that always be helping, always be closing mindset, I think there's opportunity for the if it's truly a farmer and they're really thinking about cultivating, it's not just sort of like, hey, let's check in renewal and is this person healthy or not? But I think the nature of product-led sales is you constantly having look at opportunities how to grow that account. So I think if somebody's going to own that account post-sales, and this is an organizational question, if you want different people closing the first sale versus growing the account, I think what we've seen is letting a single person own both sides of it, both the first sale as well as subsequent sales, because I think so. I think actually product-led sales is the sales rep actually has to have the hunter-farmer mindset at the same time. They can't just solely be killers. They have to be cultivating the account to go get the next kill. So it's like, I think the traditional hunter-farmer model, I think, might not be like right because farmers you have to be continually earning that business as well as continually selling into that business. And traditional farmers may not have that mindset. It may more like, are you happy? They might not be more looking into like, how can I sell you more? And so maybe that's an organizational thing, but you got to make sure you're hiring for the right people who have that sort of beyond just, are you happy? How can I drive more revenue? And again, it could be two separate people in your organization. Can it be pushed into one person? Maybe. I think that's an organizational question for you to figure out. I don't think there's any one right or wrong answer. All I do know is you need to be constantly selling into these organizations after the first sell. It's speed to first dollar, and then how can you drive more dollars after that relationship's in place because you have the contract in place. Now you need to go spread your software to more and more people and more divisions, and that's where product-led growth works.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Thomas. It was a really awesome conversation. I learned a lot. And thanks to everyone listening in. That's all for today. So I am now going to introduce our next speaker. So